Sanj, hello. You know
Vimal,
what?
how are you?
You know what? This is a great honour for me to have you here. Is this the real Sanjeev Bhaskar?
Well, it isn't,
Okay.
but this is a close approximation from a lookalike agency and sound-alike agency, but it's all you've got, so that's
Well,
what you've got to
do
work
you know
with.
what? It's good enough for me. It's good enough for me. So the first thing I'm going to ask you is, I was going to do it in the style of Cilla Black and go, I know who you are. I know who you are, but there's many people out there who perhaps the younger generation may not know who you are, but I'm sure they do. So what's your name and where you're from, and tell us what you do.
Uh, well, my name is Sanjeev Bhaskar. I'm an actor and a writer, and yeah, that's my name and that's what I do, I guess.
Brilliant. So how have you been coping with this particular lockdown itself?
You know what? Not too bad. I'm very, very aware that there are people in very difficult situations, in very challenging circumstances, who've had to deal with quite a bit. And I think that one of the keys to dealing with the lockdown is to feel lucky. And you can base that luck on whatever you want, whether it's your home or your family or your friends, or in my cases, all of those are fine, but it's also experiences. So I look back on my particularly my career, but even over my life, and I just say, that was amazing. That was incredible. I met that person. How lucky was I to kind of go to that thing? And so all of those things make me feel very fortunate. So even with the, challenges that people have had, and you can only deal with the ones that are presented to you personally. And so for me, it's been okay, because I just look back at a lot of experiences and say, yeah, I'm pretty fortunate. We've got a nice house, a family. My son is 14, and he said to me halfway through the lockdown, he just turned around to me and he said, "It's a really good job we all get on, isn't it?" And you kind of go, yes, but you're really aware that, for some people, they don't have that even. So very fortunate, very fortunate.
So has this whole period been a period of reflection for you, where you're kind of going, this is what I have achieved today. I've been very fortunate, as you've said, working with this particular individual, having done this, in terms of where you want to be, where you kind of start thinking about what you really want to do?
No, I don't think so. I think I've always done that anyway. And, I'm really lucky to be where I am. So, me being, ambitious, or, this is where I'd like to be, I just kind of go, well, this is where I am. And this is where I am isn't bad. And it's a long way from where I was. And so, where I will be, I don't know. You can have a certain hand in that yourself, obviously, but there are also circumstances that dictate that. I mean, I've always been really aware that, for my, parents' generation that came here, that knew nothing about, where they were coming to, and, really weren't made that welcome. It was very clear to them that they weren't welcome and what they had to put up with. Compared to that, it's a really long way from that. So, I look at my journey as preceding my life in a way, or preceding the point at which I could make decisions. And so, those circumstances for them were what they had to deal with, and the circumstances that we have is what we have to deal with. But it's not meant to sound smug in any way, but I've always been really aware of my good fortune. And so in that sense, it hasn't changed. So, in terms of self-reflection, yes, there's more time to think about things, but it's not something, I don't think I've done anything that I wasn't doing before.
Maybe what I was kind of looking at was for yourself. I mean, you're such an inspiration to all of us, especially ethnic minorities. I mean, I remember the first time I saw you on TV, it was just that thing of, wow, there's an Asian guy there. And he's saying all those kind of things. And it was those whole things that I think a lot of us felt and wanted to say. And you guys said it. and you said it in such a funny way. Okay, I'm talking about Goodness Gracious Me now. And that was just amazing. And you paved the way, I think, for many of us who are in the industry, on whatever side, you know, whether it's on the production side or whether it's in front of the camera or what have you. So it's just been amazing. So firstly, I wanted to say thank you to you because you have done that.
I mean, that's very nice of you to say, and it's lovely to be thought of in that way. But, you know, I wouldn't and couldn't take the credit for anybody who is doing what they're doing now. You know, it's lovely to hear that. And, you know, and I've heard people like Nish Kumar and Ramesh Ranganathan and people like that kind of mention, you know, seeing us at a very impressionable age. And being inspired by that, and that's really lovely. But I mean, it's, you know, everybody, you, them, everybody who's doing their thing is doing their thing, and you know, I'm really happy that people are doing their thing, because there weren't many people around, certainly from an Asian background, when we did Goodness Gracious Me. And Goodness Gracious Me, I mean, I think that's one of the reasons it did well, was that, and it spoke to British thissies really clearly, because British thissies would get 100% of the nuances. And I think a white British audience, you know, if they were really enlightened, might get 80% of it, because it was in English and, you know, the references were kind of generally fairly clear. But in terms of the nuances, it was going to be, you know, British thissies that were going to get every single bit.
I mean, it was very clever though, wasn't it? I mean, just going by the scene of where you're ordering the food in the restaurant. I mean, that's such a classic for most people, in that sense, where you kind of go, even if you weren't an ethnic minority, if you weren't Asian, you'd still relate to it, where you go, well, yeah, that's exactly what I do when I'm ordering poppadoms or when I'm ordering a curry. So it was that whole thing of switching it, which I think for many of us as Asians who were watching the program at the time going, wow, this is just brilliant, because this is what those guys are doing, and then they're making mockery of what we do, and you were doing it in a reverse manner with satire, and the rest of it.
Do you know what? Again, you know, I count my blessings, because I think the good fortune was that, you know, there were 4 of us main actors in the cast, of which Mira and I wrote a lot of the material, and we had 2 other writers who weren't in the cast who wrote the majority of the material. And you know, the thing that you know, I guess that you're mentioning and that you're referencing are the shared experiences, and so we just happened to get out there first. Really, I think it's also a matter of timing. I think 5 years earlier would have been too soon. I don't think, you know, a channel would have put it on, and I honestly think 5 years later, I think somebody else would have done it. And so we were just lucky that it was this group of people, of which I was a part, that arrived at that time, basically kind of venting this shared experience that we all had and had been carrying around for years, and
which many people felt
in a form
as
of
well.
Comedy.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, say that again.
And I said, which many of us felt as well at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the thing with shared experience, isn't it? I mean, it's, you know, that expression hadn't been out there before, and certainly not in sketch comedy form. And, you know, I think there were people who wrote books and who wrote plays about the British Asian experience, but I'm not aware that anybody had done it in a sketch comedy form. And the advantage of doing the sketches was that you could suddenly present lots and lots of characters, whereas if you'd done a sitcom, you might have had 2, 3, 4, 5 characters. But by doing a sketch show, you could, you know, put hundreds out there, and that kind of sped up, I suppose, that access to a broader public, in terms of, you know, what our communities were also, because I think that, you know, the British kind of community at large, I think probably had quite narrow preconceptions of what Asians and who Asians were and what they were about. And I think by presenting, you know, 100 characters that did hopefully mostly funny things, they suddenly got a different view on those kind of you know, preconceptions that they'd been carrying around.
I mean, in today's world, I mean, this was, what was it, back in 1996? You guys had that break. Was that
96, it was on the radio in 96. It was on TV in 98.
in 98? I mean, looking at 98 and we're now in 2020, would you say there's more ethnic minorities on TV, or is there still lack of diversity on TV? And maybe, just quite a few questions, what can we do to change that?
Well, the answer to your first two questions is yes, to both of them. You know, there are more ethnic faces on TV, undoubtedly. But in terms of, you know, representation, it's still not that great. I mean, you know, there are not that many British, Asian or British ethnic shows on TV, given how much TV there is. You know, there are hundreds of channels now. And when we did Goodness Gracious Me, I think there were 5. I think Channel 5 had just started. And you didn't have, you know, Sky and all those kind of channels at that point. So you only had 5 at that point. And now you've got hundreds. And I think it comes down to, for me, it comes down to the fact that until people accept that, you know, all the stories that originate in Britain are our collective stories, then until that point, there'll always be the other. And so it'll always be their story. And, you know, whether that's coming from, you know, an ethnicity point of view, or it's an age group, or it's gender, or it's region, you know, the thing is that sense of, well, their story is a psychological barrier. And I think until, I think for a lot of Asians who grew up, because, you know, we grew up watching the telly that everybody else was watching, and we were watching the movies that everyone else was going to see. But we also had the Bollywood stuff. We also had that other injection, which were also our stories. So I kind of never grew up thinking, you know, story from, you know, being born in London, that story from the Midlands, or, you know, story from Scotland, or a story from Japan was somehow not my story, because, you know, what I would connect with is whatever emotions were within it. And so they never felt alien. I didn't feel like, well, I was just, you know, observing in a documentary way other people's lives, because you look for those things that kind of connect you. But I think that wasn't generally the case. You know, I don't think people were naturally as broad as that. And, you know, I had the advantage of being, you know, British and Asian. So, you know, language at home, food at home, the kind of films that we used to go and see, you know, with my parents and stuff were different, but no less mine. I kind of understood more the English stuff being born here, but, you know, equally I didn't feel alienated from them. So I think until that happens, you know, I think the diversity issue will always be a block. But in terms of what to do, I think that, you know, highlighting that, you know, everybody who has, you know, come to Britain, made Britain their home, contributes to Britain, and is British. You know, the hierarchy thing of how long you've been here is kind of less important to me than what you're contributing. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, if you're kind of here and you've taken up British citizenship and you've kind of, you know, work within the system and you have something to contribute, then fine by me. Your value is kind of, to me, is greater than somebody who might say, well, my family's been here for 500 years, but I kind of go, well, and today you are contributing what exactly? And so, you know, it's and contributions are different. Some people make smaller ones, some people make more dramatic ones, but either way, you know, everybody has that right to express themselves in whatever way. And if it's in the creative sphere of TV and film and music and media, then you got to do your thing. Got to do your thing and believe in it, and believe that you're making a contribution.
How do we change that mindset with the decision makers? So, as an example, you're in Unforgotten, which is fantastic. It's brilliant. In fact, I'll probably ask you, is there a 4th season, by the way?
Do you know what? We were 2/3 of the way filming it when we stopped. So we've got a third to go back to. to finish.
Okay. And is your hair still looking the same, or is it kind of?
No, it's much. Look, it's long. Look,
Okay.
it's long.
Gosh.
I'm going to have to get it cut. So.
So, and maybe what was an asked was you're currently working with, is it Nicola Walker, who's your colleague in that? Do you think we'll ever be in a situation where both leads are ethnic minorities, or is it that kind of thing of, oh wait, there we've got one, we can't have another one? And I'm not just saying it just because it's based on ethnic minorities. What I'm saying, it's based on talent. And by the way, Nicola Walker is absolutely fantastic, just like yourself in that sense of you wouldn't change anything. I'm just saying, say she happened to be an ethnic minority, do you think we would ever be in that situation, or do you think those decision makers would go, no, we can't do that?
I mean, that's really for the decision makers to tell you that, really. I mean, I think we will, because I think that, see, one of the things with, if you want to believe, as most, I think, fair-minded people do, in a meritocracy. So, if you're good, you can rise to the top. If you're good, you can be featured. And I think most people would kind of go, yeah, that's fair enough. That seems reasonable. But to have that, you have to start off with a level playing field. And I think that, in terms of, I remember saying this in a message to a conference once about drama, which was that anybody who makes a drama set in Britain, contemporary drama set in Britain, in any urban area, any of the cities, if it's not diverse, then that's deliberate. Because you can't go to any kind of big city in Britain and not notice the diversity, not notice that, everybody isn't homogenized. And then it's a case of, well, whose story you want to tell within that. And if you kind of accept that cities are diverse and everybody makes a kind of contribution that is worthwhile in some way, then it matters less which kind of those characters you're picking. I think traditionally part of the problem always used to be that particularly white writers, when they wrote ethnic characters, they wrote from the presumption of what they felt their cultural baggage was. Yeah. So, with really broad brushstrokes, going back 25, 30 years, if a character was black in a program, at some point you'd be expecting the drugs thing to come in, or being arrested by the police or something like that. And if it was an Asian character, then at some point you were waiting for the arranged marriage storyline to come up, the parents not letting them do what they wanted to do. And you're going to go, that's fine, because those things happen and you can tell that story. But when that becomes the only story that you tell of those characters, that's when it becomes reductive. And I think that we are getting to the stage where we are seeing, Asian writers and black writers, writing more prominent things, which is really important, but also white writers who are who understand that, and have been brought up in a more multicultural environment, and, have black friends and Asian friends, and have been brought up with the, different ethnicities in schools, and aren't just seeing them through a very narrow prism of dramatic preconception. And so, I mean, again, I've got to be the luckiest git in the world. I mean, it's just, so Unforgotten, is a series written by Chris Lang, who is white and middle-aged, and he just wanted to write an Asian character. He thought it wouldn't make any difference what the ethnicity of the character would be. There's within the programs, because it's not that program. It's not telling that story. So again, I was very, very fortunate just to be in something that wasn't relying on some kind of trope, and I think that there are increasingly examples like that. Especially over the last few years, where it's rare is to find, and this is particularly British Asian, I think, because I think the British black community do have stars. People like Idris Elba, is a star, and so in a sense, people watch Idris Elba and not think that he's black. they're aware that he is, but that isn't the story. His blackness and his culture isn't necessarily the story. So something like Luther that he does, he's a detective, and he's good looking, and he's suave, and he's kind of like interesting to watch, and that's why you watch it. I'm not sure yet we have that equivalent. There's people like Riz Ahmed,
yeah.
who I think is a proper leading man. And over the last couple of years, I think in movies we've seen people like Dev Patel, who's kind of done it in films. And I was in a film last year called Yesterday, in which Himesh Patel was the lead. And again, Mira, my missus, and I, we played Himesh's parents. The ethnicity was never mentioned, didn't come up, because that wasn't the story. You could have told another story about those characters, about their ethnicity, that where their ethnicity plays a part in the storyline, and that would be a different film. But Richard Curtis, who wrote it, and Danny Boyle, who directed it, that's not the story they were telling. Mm-hmm. So you have that broader view of kind of just people.
In terms of for yourself, you obviously you're a comedian, you're an actor, you do game shows. You've even had a song which was at #1. You've done theatre. Where's your love? Is it? Do you? I mean, is there a specific area that you love doing, or radio, or is there a case of, or you'll take anything?
All of it.
All of it.
All of it. All of it. It's the variety. It's the variety. It's kind of, you get a different thing. If you're lucky enough to be able to do all those things, then you just get something out of each one. And the thing that I really love, there are two things because I did think about this pre-lockdown, about what I really, really loved about what I do, what I'm so fortunate enough to do. And it came down to two things. I really love the art of communicating something. And you can do that in a documentary, you can do that on stage, you can do it radio, you can do it through writing. There's lots of ways of doing it, but that sense of communicating something to someone, I really, really love that. I have a passion for that. And the other thing is that there is a magic to what I do, the things that that we do, which is collaboration. It's that, you and I, Vimal, we could come up with something that I could never come up with on my own, and that to me is the magic of collaboration, and that, again, the form doesn't matter so much. So when you marry those two things together, collaborating with other creative people to communicate something, I'm really happy. I'm really, really happy.
Is there anyone specific that you'd like to work with? Or maybe your role? I can actually see you being the next Doctor Who. Would you want to do that?
I don't know. What are the hours? How much? How much is it? It's kind of like, I don't know how much because they could say, look, we want you to be the new Doctor Who, and you go, that's great. And they go, it's 10 quid. And I go, what? Yeah, 10 quid. We're going to give you 10 quid if you want to do it. And then I might go, well, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, but then they'll say, but look who you're being sponsored by. QuickBooks or whoever it is. Who you been?
Yeah, but that might end. You never know that's going to stop.
It might be on the outside of the TARDIS or something like that. I don't know. On ITV.
That would be the future. Can you imagine? It was. American shows, and I think British shows as well. American shows in the 50s. That's what they would do. They would be sponsored by, a car company, and they would have like a game show, and at the beginning of the game show, the guy would say, hey, welcome to, you get lucky. You get lucky. Now, the way I get lucky is by driving a Buick. And then they would cut to this guy saying, look at the beautiful interior. And we have the velvet inside, and the steering wheel is pure leather. And here it's got its own clock. And then they would go back to the show. So, that embedded advertising was something that would happen. Bond films are famous for kind of linking up with various products where, James Bond at some point is wearing a kind of like, brand of watch or driving a type of car, or, I know with one of the Bond films, it was a beer company. You know, Bond is famous for his, vodka martinis.
Martinis, yeah.
And in one scene, he was at a bar, and
was it
yeah,
Heineken? You go,
So,
wait there, what's he doing? Yeah. So come on, Sanj, if I did have that wand and I could wave it, what role would you kind of go, you know what, I wouldn't mind having a shot at that?
I don't mind. I've always wanted, I'm a big Bond fan, so I'd love to be in a Bond film. James Bond himself, let's be realistic. James Bond's accountant. Now, there's something I could
Mate, I remember you doing a Sean Connery impression. Did you used to do that in part of your act? Many moons ago.
I have.
Secret agents.
Well, the thing with yes, we should come on to that, because that's another facet to our unspoken bit of the conversation, isn't it? Really, is that I mean, most people can do a Sean Connery impression because it's all on the S's, isn't it?
True.
Yes.
Yes,
it is.
So, Sean, can I hear you say she sells seashells on the seashore?
She sells on the seashore.
Thank you.
So that's why I kind of started doing Roger Moore impressions. It was just easier to go.
That was it. It was your eyebrow, wasn't it? Could you can lift your eyebrow?
Yes, I most certainly can.
Wow,
yeah. So let's talk about our personal history, because obviously this is a question I had for you, really. Because we met at university.
Yeah.
Where I kind of started performing with Nitin Sawhney.
Yeah.
World-renowned composer now.
Yeah.
And so you're, and there are kind of, and this isn't a boast, this is just factual. But there are millions of people who've seen me work, right, through the TV shows and stuff like that. And, around the world, there have been kind of, it will number millions. And in fact, let me just digress for a second. I remember the Commands at Number 42, which was a series that I did across the 90s, across the 2000s actually, was shown in India. And I remember asking my cousin, who was kind of vaguely connected with the media there, and I said, are many people watching it here? And he said, no, not many. And I went, oh, okay, fair enough. He said, 20, 30 million. Tops. And I thought, in a country of 1 billion, that's not very good, is it? So there are millions of people who've seen what I do, but you saw me, we met first before I did any of this.
Yeah.
So what's your take on that change? What changes have you seen in me, A, and B, was it weird for you to then see me on TV?
You know what? It was just so inspirational, I think. I think when I saw you, it was just... Because I remember the first time I saw you, I think was a place called the Boathouse, which was at uni when we saw... and it was you and Nitin. And it was just like, wow, you just had so much command, on stage. It was just a fantastic venue where you were performing. But it was just the control and everything that you'd kind of pieced together. You had little skits that you were kind of doing, various sketches. I remember, I'm sure you sang a song in Italian. Did you? Can you?
We didn't.
Or you persuaded? Yeah, and
we did it later.
Yeah, you convinced me that you actually spoke Italian. You could have just been making it up with the sounds and what have you, but it sounded authentic. Not that I understand Italian. So I remember you kind of doing all that, and then seeing that particular journey itself. It was just like, wow, and I think for me, I didn't realize the hard work that you'd actually put into it. And so to see somebody who's of Asian background, as I've said already, just extremely inspirational. And I think as time's gone on and on and on, you realize how great you are, in that sense, because you kind of go, you, for many of us, have paved the way. And something I was going to ask you back, it was whether you feel there's an element of pressure on you, because many of us do look up to you, and kind of you and Mira, Kulveer as well, and Nina as well, who were your colleagues, the four of you, when you did Goodness Gracious Me, and kind of going, wow, is there more of a saying? Have you got more of a say in changing the way industry thinks? So does that kind of put a pressure on you, or not really?
It doesn't. And, it's again, it's very humbling to hear that, because when you do a program or you make a program or something, you just concentrate on trying to do the best job that you can. You're not really thinking about its own legacy in a way. You focused on the program, you make it to the best of your abilities. Sometimes it works out really well, sometimes it doesn't, and then audiences, people just decide whether they like it or not. And the fact that people have enjoyed or found inspiring some of the things that I've been involved in is really humbling, because that's not, we weren't aiming for inspiring. So the fact that people did like it. I remember when Goodness Gracious Me came out, I remember saying in an interview afterwards, because people were talking about it being a breakthrough program at that time and it being groundbreaking. And I said, look, I don't mind, I don't mind if people kind of watch it and say, I think that's really good. I want to try something like that. I said, but also I don't mind that much if people kind of say, I think this is crap and I could do better, as long as they go and do something. As long as people do something afterwards, I think that's where the momentum lies, because particularly with comedy, but with, anything that's artistic in any way, it's always going to come down to personal tastes.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I didn't really come into the arts until at a latter date. So not until I was in my mid-30s, where I suddenly got the bug. And that's where I started appreciating more of what you did, if that kind of makes sense and answers the question that I said. Whereas prior to that, I didn't really appreciate it. It was just a case of, oh, yeah. I mean, it was very funny. There were so many characters that you did where I was kind of going, gosh, that could possibly be me. That could also be me. In fact, I'm all of them. Yeah. So, yeah.
Especially Check Please.
You know what? That was me. I'm hoping it was. And if it was, check, please. Where's my check? Where's my check? I want my check now. So, no.
But you see, the thing is that I'm like you. You see, I did Goodness Gracious Me when I was in my mid-30s. So, prior to that,
You're not that old.
I am that old. I'm older.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
You blagged it, mate.
A bit more respect wouldn't go amiss,
It's 100. Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
You are, sir. You are, sir.
Yeah,
now,
so
anyway.
No, I'm not a sir.
Aren't you? Did you get an OBE or something like that, or no? Do you get?
Yeah, sir is a knighthood.
Oh, didn't you? Okay, so close. Are you still there?
You get your OBE, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, okay, you can dispense with. You went from the age thing back to kind of like even a sir.
Yeah, I kind of lost you a little bit there, Sanj. So all I heard was that So you've got an OBE, that's right.
Yes, what I was saying was that the respect that was accorded to me for being older lasted for just as long until you kind of knocked me down a peg or two by reminding me that I'm not even a sir.
Look,
that's how precarious respect is, isn't it? These days?
I weren't trying to put you in that category of I can't believe it's not butter. I can't believe it's not sir. I weren't trying to put you in that particular category itself. I mean, uni was fantastic, and from what I remember was, tell me this is true. I'm sure you did. Did you do Charlie Chaplin as one of your presentations?
I did, and the story behind that, this is weird because no one's ever asked me this, but the story behind it was one of the presentations, in my marketing class, was about computers. And at that time, this was before I worked for IBM, IBM was using a Charlie Chaplin character as part of their advertising. And I thought it would be really funny if I kind of dressed up as Charlie Chaplin and did the presentation like that. Because my argument was to the tutor afterwards, well, which one do you remember? And so I thought, nobody's going to do the Charlie Chaplin thing. So I went to the library and borrowed a bowler hat, and a jacket and everything. And I had a marker pen that I used for the moustache. Went up to the class, waited outside until my team was doing the presentation. and then burst through the door as the kind of marketing officer, twiddled the cane around, tripped over a couple of things, did my presentation, and then left, right? And I went back to the library, to the toilets, and put on my regular gear and a kind of side parting and everything. I couldn't get the marker pen off. And so the problem was I then looked like Hitler. And so I kind of then walked back with this side parting, with this Hitler moustache, with people just kind of thinking, what is he doing? And it took me about a day to get rid of it.
I think I remember seeing you with the moustache, because it was like, Sanj, why have you got that moustache? And you said, I just had a presentation.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I never did it again.
Now you've got to tell me that you got a first in that particular presentation.
I did say afterwards to the tutor, I did say, look, in terms of, being memorable, which one do you, and he said, yeah, yours. So I said, well, then you should give us the top marks then. I don't know if he did now, it's so long ago.
Who cares?
Who cares? Exactly.
Who cares? Who cares? As you say, you've been lucky, 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 and may that luck continue, because it's brilliant. So for you, I mean, just in terms of all the characters that you did, I know we've touched on Goodness Gracious Me. Who was your favourite character that you really enjoyed? Did you enjoy doing Check Please, or was there other characters that you kind of thought that you really enjoyed?
I really did enjoy Check Please, and the beauty of doing Check Please character was that we would probably write maybe 4 or 5 sketches, and then since we were in the situation, it was, can we come up with anything now that we're here? So there were a few sketches that we just made up on the spot and threw them in. I think if there's one character I enjoyed playing more than any other, it was the Guru Maharishi Yogi, the Indian mystic who knows nothing about Indian mysticism, and he's just there to kind of fleece gullible Westerners. And
Batman. That's brilliant. That's
Sanskrit.
Mate, that was my favourite character. That was my favourite.
Oh well,
character.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly to play. I hated sticking on the beard and all that kind of stuff, but that was really good fun to play. And the other one that I enjoyed doing, which is less of a performance, was Skip into the Punjabi Kangaroo, which, for people who don't know, Skippy the Bush Kangaroo was a program from Australia in the 60s about this boy and his friend, his pet kangaroo. And basically we used the original footage, and because kangaroos don't talk, obviously, whenever they cut to the kangaroo, to Skippy, I would play him as a sort of drunk, sexist Punjabi kangaroo. And I used to write them, so I would watch Skippy the Bush Kangaroo, I think was half an hour, 40 minutes program, and I would watch 3 of those episodes, pick out the bits that I could use, try to fashion some kind of narrative through it, and it would just be me in a sound booth doing all the voices of different creatures in it and stuff like that. It's closest to madness I've ever felt.
And great fun to do. And did you have a favourite sketch that you've done?
Within Goodness Gracious Me?
Yeah, within Goodness Gracious Me.
There's quite a few, actually. Yeah. I mean, there was one that I wrote, actually, quite early on, which was, there's an old black and white film called Brief Encounter, which was made in the 40s.
I can hear somebody going, Jai, on top of a train.
Exactly. Well, it's very famous for a very, heartbreaking goodbye scene between the main 2 characters at a train station in London. And I thought, wouldn't it be funny if that was at an Indian railway station? And so their goodbye is just interrupted by someone selling golgappe, someone selling novelty trumpets, and then somebody, Jaiwala, and constantly interrupting them. And so it was a very filmic one. And as I said, one that I wrote quite early on. So that's certainly one of my favorites, to look back on.
I always
and obviously going for an English.
Yes, of course. I also like the Steve Austin.
Yeah. So that was Sharat Sardana, who was one of the main writers on that, and then I worked with him on the Kumars as well. And he unfortunately passed away at the age of 40. So that was, it's somebody I still miss every day. But he and I basically went out to a bar in London one evening, armed only with his credit card and my pad and pen. And we basically had a lot to drink, and I wrote down everything that we spoke about. And in that session came the idea of Skipinder the Punjabi kangaroo, the 6 million rupee man, and there were a few songs that came out of that session. Asian Bridegroom Detective, which was another mock kind of like parody of an American series that we did, which was an Indian groom in the full sera and everything, who happened to be a detective. And so wherever he went, his barat went with him. So he basically went everywhere on a white horse, very, very slowly.
Would there be ever any, and not bringing it back on TV, but touring, goodness gracious me. So a bit like Monty Python, where, I mean, if there were venues, I mean, I know I'd be like, yeah, I've got to go and see this. You guys do all those classic sketches, which we all crave for, I think, to this day. Because like, it's amazing the number of times where you'll suddenly get a message where somebody will send you a WhatsApp message and you're like, oh yeah, I remember this. This is just brilliant. Or even a young person kind of going, oh, look what I came across. And you're like, yeah, we saw this 30 years ago or whatever it was, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So would you ever do that? Do you consider doing something like that?
Do you know, interesting enough, so we toured, goodness gracious me, at the end of all the series we did. And so this would have been around year 2000, I think, 99 or 2000. And we did a tour around Britain. We did 25, 30 dates. And it was really exciting. It was real kind of, it's like being in a rock band or something. We'd play, I remember we played in Wolverhampton for 2 nights. We played in Birmingham for 3 nights. We played in Warwick for 1 night. And we would York for 1 night, then Bristol for 2 nights, Cardiff for 2 nights. And we kind of went around doing that for a month. And nobody has ever suggested that we do it again. I mean,
you need to do it again.
Yeah, but the thing is, Vimal, that we are all a lot older. And so there is that danger of kind of people watching it and going, well, where did these Buddha come from? And so, you have to deal with that. So, you have to kind of do, I mean, it's one of the, we have done reunion shows. The last one we did was about 4 years ago, I think, but we've done 2 reunion shows in the last 6 or 7 years. And we love doing that. We were getting together and we did, new material. And that was really, really good fun. The tour thing is a good idea. Not really thought about it.
Yeah, man. Honestly, I think you should do it, definitely. In terms of writing, are you looking at writing anything, or kind of maybe kind of going, this is narrative. These narratives haven't been heard. These particular stories haven't been heard. Are you still writing, or are you?
I am. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of. Yeah, I find writing really hard, and the main reason it's really hard is because I have no talent. But the other thing is that it's lonely. You sit there on your own, tapping away at keys. But there are definitely stories that I would like to tell. And I think that some of them are comedy, some of them are comedy drama, some of them are drama. I mean, again, going back to my incredible good fortune, from starting at 35 to where I am now, so just over 20 years, is, I've done the variety of stuff. I've done little bits in films, and I've done lots of teleseries, and I've done documentaries, which is something else I love doing. And, those are all written as well. So, being able to turn my hand to any of those is great fun to do. The thing with writing is, for someone like me, I'm not prolific, so I need time and space. And so I can't multitask. My missus can. She's been writing for hours today. And she just said, look, I'm going to get this done today. And she sat down and she wrote a script. And I can't do that. I don't have that kind of ability.
You need to go down the pub with your pad, get the shots.
That's right.
That's it. And the job's done.
Yeah, I mean, if I do that every day, maybe, you know, there'll be a book, but it won't make any sense. The thing is, it'll start off really clear. You know, the first paragraph and the first page will be, oh man, this is a really interesting setup, a kind of dissy comedy, horror, sci-fi drama.
Yeah.
And then by the end of it, people will go, this is just yubbly. This is just, none of it makes any sense. This is just like random words that some of them don't even, some of these words are invented.
See, it's quite interesting. For me, I've always seen you kind of take to comedy so naturally and easily. It's, you know, it's like a duck to water, you know, in that sense. It doesn't matter. You give you a scenario and you're away with it. You'll pick it up, and maybe I'm sure that you improvise with it and kind of put your Sanjeev gold on it and turn it into something even more beautiful. So that's where I'm kind of always expecting a bit more comedy from you, maybe. But away from, mate, I don't know, mate, it's that thing, isn't it, where you kind of want to get away from that typecast as well, where you're kind of going, we've done those jokes already. And I'm not saying bring goodness gracious me back, because those characters had that time and that period. And as you rightly said, things have moved on, but there's new narrative, which still can have comedy, and it doesn't need to say that it's Asian.
No, you're right, and yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, it's not so much that. I mean, you know, you introduced me. One of the words you used to introduce me was the word comedian, and I've never used that term to describe myself, because to me, a comedian is somebody who can write and tell jokes, and I can't. I really can't. I can't tell jokes at all. Terrible. I do feel that I've got an understanding of how comedy works. And so in terms of characters, in terms of scenarios, and in terms of dialogue, I can come up with stuff. But it's, you know, coming up with stuff is a different skill. It's a different skill to writing. Writing is, you know, the skills involved in writing are so manifold that, you know, but part of that is the ability to sit down and grind out a script. And to write kind of, in the end, 7-8 drafts, maybe over a couple of years. And that's a different skill set, to be able to come up with things quickly, or write them down quickly, or, you know, write sketches, which, you know, traditionally can be from, you know, I don't know, 30 seconds to 4 minutes. And, you know, within those, you do have a sort of narrative, but you're building to a punchline of some kind. With longer form things, whether it's scripts or books, there's a different kind of discipline to it. So, you know, it's, some of them are transferable, some of the skills, but some of them are unique skills. I mean, you know, for me, the artistic superhero for me is a singer-songwriter, because I kind of go, look, you can sing, that's a skill, sing really well. You can write, that's a separate skill. And then you can come up with the music, in terms of compose the music, that's another skill. And you can play an instrument. 4 things. It's a kind of like, you know, it's a dissy 4 for the price of 1. It's kind of, so that, to me, you know, those are 4 distinct skills, you know, to be able to sing, to be able to play, to be able to compose, and to be able to write. And so, you know, but people don't think of it. You know, they'll see an Ed Sheeran and they'll go, yeah, I like that song. I don't like that song. Whatever.
Well, I did see you and hear you do it in Italian, so you've got some skill there, then.
Yeah, but you don't even know if it was Italian.
It sounded good enough for me.
Actually, it was Italian.
Was it? Did you keep saying pizza and lasagna? I can't remember. Can you speak Italian?
I've tried to teach myself a little bit.
Okay.
So, what is it? Now I'm mixing up with French and Spanish.
Arrivederci.
That's goodbye. I got that. Yeah. It's probably written down. I could probably. I can order food.
Oh, that's good. That's good. But look, Sanj, it's been wonderful chatting to you. It's been great. And thank you so much for taking time out to chat to us. I know it's been a few years. Hopefully I'll get to chat to you again. But what can we look forward to? Something maybe that you've got coming up. So Unforgotten 4 will be in is it a year away, 6 months away? I assume it depends when you start.
It depends
filming.
on when. Yeah, it depends on when we start filming. It'll be a month after that, and then they'll probably need at least a month or 2 to edit it and then it'll go out after that. You know, when it goes out, it's down to the channel. But we've got no firm date on when we start filming. Like most other people, you know, we have to. I mean, certainly anything that's filming for television and for movies, you know, have to be now. They have to take into account the kind of world we're living in. So, you know, scenes have got to be socially distanced. You've got to have groups of people that don't mix with other groups of people. I do know that, for instance, makeup and hair, who are the ones who are close, they're touching you, they will probably be in full PPE gear in order to do it. So, you know, there's kind of, there's still so much uncertainty about that. I mean, we're lucky because we've done 2/3 of it. And so we've only got a third left to do. And a lot of our kind of busy scenes with lots of people and, you know, people, you know, poking each other or whatever, you know, have already been done, because that'd be much more difficult to do now until, you know, everybody knows roughly where we're at and we feel a bit more reassured about the kind of world we're living in.
Well, when it's done, I'm sure we'll watch it. Is there anything else coming out soon on TV or something we need to look out for? I know there's your advert that you do regularly that's going out at the moment. I think
I have no control when that goes out. It's kind of fun.
Which is great.
No,
you've got a fantastic voice though with your adverts. There was did you do the Lloyd's commercial as well? No, wait there. Was it Friends Provident or something like that? I can't remember.
No, I did do a bank one.
Can't remember what the bank
one.
No,
it wasn't either of those. No, I think it was called the ARG Bank or the ANG Bank or something like that. It was letters. I know there were letters. Okay. I did that some time ago. But no, the one area where, you know, I may be doing a couple of things is in animation. Because that is the one area where the current climate doesn't really impact that much. Because people can carry on kind of designing things on computers and people can do voices for things fairly remotely. So other than that, you know,
can you say what it is, or you're not allowed to say what it is yet?
No, well, Mira and I did we did some voices for an animation called Dragon Rider, which we did last year, I think, and that may be out at some point. That's something that we've done. But there's another animation that I'm talking about at the moment, so I can't really say much more about it. TV thing. Well, it's not a film thing. But, you know, again, you know, working with fellow creative people and communicating, you know, very happy.
Great. Look, I'm going to just stop recording. Thank you so much for your time, Sanjay. As I said, I really appreciate it.
You're most welcome.
Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you.